Hey everybody, my name is Rebecca Giannini. This is my group. If you have found yourself here, it probably means you want to work on your relationships in some capacity or another. I am so glad that you found this group, and I hope that you get engaged and you stay plugged in and you ask for the many resources that we offer in this group. I go live every week on Mondays at 5:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and I do take topic requests. So there are so many different resources that we offer, and I would love to help you on your journey in improving your relationships and becoming the person that you'd like to be. It's difficult work. It takes a lot of practice, and it is deep, sad work that takes a lot of effort, but it's also incredible, and it also is life-changing, and it will also make it so that your relationships feel incredible, and so that you can stop harming yourself and harming others in ways that you might have learned growing up, that you probably learned growing up in ways that still cause you a fair amount of distress. Most of us develop our patterns somewhere in childhood, and those patterns stick with us for life until we figure out a plan to shift out of those patterns. And they cause harm to us and our relationships and to the people that we care about. And when we see ourselves causing harm to ourselves and others that we care about over a long period of time, it's really easy to internalize beliefs about ourselves that are just not true, or beliefs about others that are just not true. And then those beliefs become solidified as part of our character, or we believe them to be part of our character. And it becomes this sort of self-perpetuating cycle where we keep making the same mistakes over and over again. And we believe that it's because there's something wrong with us, or because it's just the way we are. And we see the patterns repeating, and it causes us a lot of shame and a lot of judgment, which is what we're going to be talking about tonight. And what I want to say to you is that you are more than your patterns. You are more than your trauma. You are more than your deepest wounds. And on the other side of healing, and even just on the journey, there is such incredible, there are so many beautiful lessons available to you. And the farther you get on your journey, the more your life will begin to look more and more beautiful around you. I was working with a mom this week, and she was talking about how she looks around at her life now and she can barely recognize it, because she has been doing some of this deep work. And she's only worked with me for a couple of months, and most of the sessions, there are a lot of tears on the sessions, and there are a lot of deep, sad things that we talk about, and lots of things that we celebrate and progress that we celebrate too. But she was talking about this week how she barely recognizes her life anymore. She looks around, and she can't believe how much she truly looks in the mirror and loves herself. And she can't believe how she looks at some of her long-standing, lifelong patterns that she is free from now. Not because there's anything inherently magic about me or this work. It's just the way that our brain works. And so when you understand how your brain works, when you understand behavior and thought patterns and how generational patterns are passed down, you have power to shift them. It's still difficult work. It still takes effort, but you have power, and you can live in an empowered state instead of having life happen to you. And that is one of the hardest things about growing up in trauma, is that it can feel like life happens to you. And then it can feel like you are just reacting to a series of difficult things that keep happening to you. And it's really easy to get really sad and have life be really difficult when that's the way that you live it. So For tonight, the topic is going to be about shame and punishment and judgment of self. And that tends to go hand in hand with trauma, unfortunately, because our brain is basically just trying to make sense of our repeated experiences. So what happens is we are having, oh, and if you're here with me on live, please put questions in the comments. I will get back to them when I have a chance. And if you're watching this on the replay, know that I will monitor the comments as well. So basically what happens is our brain is trying to make sense of our experiences, and it's trying to keep us safe, and it's trying to recognize patterns in our experiences to help us avoid the pain that caused us so much distress. And so our brain is an incredible like computer, and it logs patterns, and it figures out how to make sense of things, and it attaches meaning to different experiences so that we know what to expect if that same experience arises in the future. It's like, you know, if our memory was wiped and we didn't have this function in our brain, well, every time we saw a rattlesnake, you know, we would lose one of the population to, you know, a rattlesnake, because we wouldn't be able to clock that, like, that's a dangerous thing. We should avoid that when we hear that rattle, that's a problem. So basically our brain has this mechanism to help us recognize patterns, especially patterns that cause us to feel unsafe or cause us to feel pain. And so our brain is trying to keep us safe from those things. So in relationships, what this looks like is what it feels like when we are sharing our pain and how that is accepted by another, or what happens when we make a mistake and how others respond to that, or what happens when we what happens when we reach out for physical affection, what happens when we do all of these things. Our brain clocks what happens in specific relationships. Now, when you're a child and your brain is clocking all of these experiences, you have less knowledge to pull from. And so the knowledge that you are pulling from tends to be, I am good, I am bad, I am lovable, or I am not lovable. And so we have these experiences with our caregivers who are just flawed, traumatized people as well. And our brains are trying to make sense of why didn't mom comfort me in that situation? Why didn't dad do such and such? Why didn't my sibling do this? Why did my sibling do that? And our brain is just trying to make sense of these painful experiences that we're having growing up. And we tend to internalize that shame. And if you add to that, you know, parents, caregivers, siblings who also speak negatively about you, then your brain is internalizing that too. Your brain is seeing, okay, in this situation, my brother called me names. In this situation, my mom withheld affection. In this situation, my dad did such and such. And your brain is figuring out how to get love and what removes love. And so all of your patterns basically come from that place of trying to get your needs met in a given situation when you were growing up. And so some of these things are really helpful. And the patterns that you developed as a child helped you survive that situation, whatever it was. And no matter how healthy or how unhealthy it was, the patterns that you learned, the coping mechanisms that you learned in childhood helped you survive. So we want to be thankful for those things. We want to be thankful for those patterns and those coping mechanisms that we learned as a child. And at the same time, recognize when those same coping mechanisms that saved us before are actually harming us now. And there comes a time when you are in a different relationship, a better relationship, a relationship with your child who is innocent, a relationship with your partner or a friend or a sibling who is no longer, you know, in that harmful environment with you. And you need different tools and you need different skills. And I call that wartime tools versus peacetime tools. And so the problem is sometimes we are actually in peacetime, but we're still responding as if we're in wartime. And we call that our triggers, right? So usually what happens is we are responding to some sort of trigger. We're responding to a certain percentage of what's happening right in front of us and a certain percentage of what happened before. Something about this current situation is reminding us of something that happened before that was deeply painful. And our brain is like, oh no, I recognize this, get me out of here. And we respond in one of the four trauma responses: fight, flight, fawn, or freeze. I think I have a video on the 4 different trauma responses. So if you're interested in that, let me know. Otherwise, it's on my list of videos that I have running in the future. So if you want that video, put trauma responses in the comments and I'll make sure that we get to do that video. So we have a situation and something about that situation feels familiar. And we don't often recognize we're triggered at the time that we're triggered, although over time you can sort of recognize, hey, I am being triggered. This such and such wound is being triggered in me. But what we do have is our patterns of behavior, how we respond. So for some of us, that might be fight. So we might get big and loud and aggressive and mean. For flight would be disappearing. Flight would be shutting down. It would be walking away, literally. Freeze would be making yourself sort of as invisible as you can, not engaging, but not fully leaving. So kind of observing, analyzing, and making yourself small. And fawn would be trying to people please or trying to win over the threat and eliminate the threat by befriending or pleasing whatever feels like it's a threat. So what happens is, so we're triggered, we're responding in one of our trauma responses, and then after the fact, we have this like wave of guilt or this wave of confusion or frustration or whatever it is towards ourselves and or toward that other person or a combination of the two. And then we're left dealing with this confusing situation of like, why did I respond that way? I know I hurt this person. Why did I do this that way? Why did they do this the way they did that? And we're trying to make sense of the whole situation. And as a part of that, we often are in a story of shame, and we're in a story of self-judgment and punishment. And it's really easy to navigate those experiences through shame, especially if you had a caretaker or a sibling or a parent who also spoke shame over you. Something like, why do you always do that? Why can't you just, why aren't you ever, you always do this, or whatever it is that they might have said that was like an attack on your character. So this is who you are. I don't like this about who you are. And they probably didn't say that in those words. They might have said it with a sigh of exasperation or a look of disgust or a look of contempt or whatever it is. They responded somehow negatively to your behavior. You internalize that shame, you internalize that sort of response, and then in turn, you offer that to yourself when you make mistakes or when you do things that you shouldn't be doing or when you repeat the same patterns over and over. So if you are noticing yourself offering a lot of shame to your kids even, or to yourself, to your partner, to your siblings, if you are offering a lot of shame or judgment, some people might call that wallowing, or I don't know, my brain is a little bit tired right now, so I'm having a hard time finding the right words. But if you're getting stuck in a cycle of shame, it tells me a couple of things. One, that you need some help reparenting yourself and responding to yourself in a way that you deserved to be responded to as a child. That you didn't have enough loving modeling for you, responding to mistakes that you made or responding to you in deep emotional situations. You didn't have enough of that. And so it's difficult for you to offer that to yourself. Reparenting is one of the resources I would recommend for that. If you are interested in the resources we have on reparenting, just put reparenting in the comments and we'll make sure that you get that. The other thing it tells me, if you are really struggling in shame and self-punishment and judgment of yourself or judgment of others even, is that you are struggling to differentiate between character and behavior. So what you do versus who you are, what you did versus who you are forever. So a lot of times we struggle to differentiate between this mistake I made, or this mistake I keep making, or this mistake I remember making my whole life, and who I am. And those two things are very different. The pattern of behavior that you learned in order to keep yourself safe, in order to cope with your pain, is very different than who you are as a person. And for that, I would recommend the resources that we have on the internal framework. The internal framework is basically our belief system about who we are and what we're capable of, and all of our behavior comes out of that. So if in your internal framework, you believe yourself to be somebody with a bad temper, well, you've got a lot of experiences that have shown you that you have a bad temper. And if you don't understand how the internal framework works, you're going to keep perceiving your life through that filter of you having a bad temper, and it will be a self-perpetuating cycle. The same thing if you believe you're overly sensitive, or if you believe you are hard to love, or if you believe you're lazy, or if you believe you are mean or unkind, or whatever it is. You have these beliefs about yourself that are held up by these repeated experiences, or even just really intense experiences. And then your life begins to be filtered through those, and then you continue to live out those truths. So if any of this is resonating for you, just either put, now I'm going to forget the first one that I mentioned, repair work, the internal framework, the trauma responses, put one of those or all of them if you want all three in the comments. We'll make sure we get you the resources on that. And some of you are probably going to be ready to take the next step. Some of you might have been in this group for kind of a long time, and you've been watching videos and getting some of these resources, and you're ready to take the next step. If that's the case for you, please reach out to actually just myself right now, because Christina is on maternity leave. So I am running the group by myself right now. Tiara is helping, but so you could reach out to Tiara or myself. Tiara has been offering some resources, but she's still fairly new. So please reach out to one of us, and we will make sure that you get the resources you need. And if you are somebody who is ready to break generational patterns and focus on peacetime tools and work on letting go of your wartime tools, let me know. I'm happy to work with you on that. It is my deepest honor to work with families and couples and individuals who are ready to be done with some of those patterns that are causing so much distress and pain to themselves and the ones that they care about. So I think I'm going to leave it at that. Please take care of yourself, and I will see you soon. All right, bye-bye.